What is going on, everyone? Anthony Drew Gary here, host of the How To Show, where we talk about optimizing life, money, and happiness one how-to at a time. And this week, before I get started, I want to give a little bit of a shout out, a little bit of a plug. I've got some friends over at the Circle City Success Podcast. They've done hundreds of episodes now. They're interviewing folks that are really defining what it means to be successful in the Indianapolis area. And so go and check them out on the podcast player of your choice. That's Circle City Success. Matt and Drew and my other buddies over there. They're good folks doing good work and sharing stories of people that have stories that are really fun and entertaining in the Indianapolis area. So wanted to plug them for a minute before we get started in this week's episode of this show. And this is essentially the financial order of operations. And I'm really thankful I made a post in my Facebook community, which isn't really a community, it's just my Facebook friends, and asked them, what topics are you interested in? What should I cover? What's on your mind? And one of those items of feedback was, what's the financial order of operations? Can you compare it to Maslow's hierarchy of needs? What should I be doing with my money? And it's a great question. It's one that I don't think specifically I've ever covered in an episode, so I'm really excited to cover it. So this is essentially how to prioritize your money and go into the financial order of operations. And so to do this appropriately, I found a graphic from my friends at ChooseFI's Facebook community that I think does a pretty good job at this. I don't think any of them are perfect, but it'll start to put the framework together to have a discussion. So let me pull that up real quick, and we'll see what it looks like to talk through that. So this is a graphic that was shared in the ChooseFI community. Aptus, I'm not sure who Aptus is, but all credit to Aptus, created this waterfall idea of tax-efficient investing. And so there are some pieces to this that basically are table stakes and to begin the conversation. And so we'll start with those, but to get an idea of the graphic, this is essentially the idea of a waterfall, or if you've ever seen some sort of idea that they have a bunch of glass pyramids stacked up and you start pouring in the top one, and once the top glass gets filled, it starts to fill into the next row, and then once they get filled, it starts to fill into the next row and the next row. And so that's generally what this is starting to set up. And I apologize that the graphic that here is a little bit outdated. It's got 2019 limits on certain things. You can Google the new limits for HSA, for 401k, for IRA, and there'll be new ones published for 2024 here very shortly if they haven't come out already. And so the first bucket that you see to the left-hand side of the screen is to get the match on your 401k. And that assumes that you are an employee and not an employer. So we'll focus on that for a minute. And essentially, the 401k match is a part of your compensation plan. It's just been delineated out as part of your retirement. And so if your company, matches the first 3 or the first 4 or first 5% that you put into your retirement accounts on your own behalf, that's essentially free money. It's 100% return on investment because you put in $1 and they put in $1 too. So want to make sure that we're getting those as soon as we can, and then we start to think about what can we do after that, because this is essentially a form of your compensation. It's just thought about a little bit differently. And so the next bucket talks about paying down high interest debt. And I think this is still critically important. The graphic says plus 10%, and that's an interest rate that they're talking about. And so things that are credit cards, things that are personal loans, things that have high interest rates. Unfortunately, we're not talking about mortgages yet. Mortgages are not yet at 10%. Hopefully they never get there. But this is what that category is just debt that the average interest rate on the debt is historically higher than the average rate of return that the stock market might give you. It makes more sense to pay off that debt, because when you're paying off a credit card that's, let's say, has 22% interest on it, you are effectively putting money into a savings account and getting 22% interest on it. It's just the reverse scenario where you're not paying the interest. Where you're not getting the interest, you're paying it, and ultimately you're getting the same benefit of the interest rate there. And so want to put in a plug between buckets 2 and 3 is that there's probably a missed opportunity here to plug in some emergency fund numbers so that you've got some dollars set aside in cash or in high yield savings accounts for a rainy day. Just something to get you by in case you have an emergency. you have a little bit of unemployment, things of that nature. That probably goes between bucket 2 and 3. And so then you've got bucket 3 that talks about HSA, and that stands for Health Savings Account, and it says triple tax benefits. I did detailed videos on how to use and optimize health savings accounts, but this is effectively a way to put dollars into a specific account before you pay taxes on them so that you can use those dollars to pay for healthcare related expenses. There are a lot of nuances to this. I recommend you check out those videos specifically. I'll link to them in the description for this one, but this is a way to get those dollars in tax-free. They can grow tax-free if you have an HSA that allows you to invest those dollars. And then when you spend on your HSA, you also get to spend tax-free on the withdrawal portion of that. And so triple tax benefits is the main name of the game for HSA, and that's why this shows up in bucket number 3. And so buckets number 4, 5, and 6, I think that you can interchange all of these. And the reason that I say that is because I think it is important for you to have some dollars in each type of bucket here. And so you've got your 401k to the max, and that's a tax deferred situation. And what that means is that you do not pay taxes when you send that money to your 401k. Uncle Sam doesn't get to touch it on the front end. Uncle Sam only gets to touch it on the back end. And so the opposite is true for the Roth IRA. Uncle Sam does touch that on the front end, but Uncle Sam does not touch that on the back end. And then you've got some situations here for taxable accounts. And this is just opening up a brokerage account through any one of the different custodians and starting and investing that way with with after tax dollars. And having, basically a scenario where those dollars are not specifically set up in retirement accounts so that you have flexibility there. What happens if you want to take a year of retirement before the government stated 62 and a half or 55, whatever the numbers are for your situations? You can't draw on Social Security yet. You can't pull out of your 401k without taking some sort of penalty because you're trying to retire just a little bit early. That's where that taxable account can be to your benefit. And I think that having money in all 3 of these makes some sense, because if you pull the different levers on the way that you can get that money out based on, the standard deductions, different things in that nature, it makes sense to have money in all 3 buckets so that you can pull your different levers to keep your tax rate relatively low. I did a detailed video on this as well. That's how to retire on 6 figures and pay no federal income taxes. Very cool video. It's one of my best viewed ones. You need to check that one out too. And so then you get to the 7th bucket in this arrangement, which is essentially paying down low interest debt. And that's what they're calling 5% or less. And effectively what they're saying here is if you have low interest debt, 5% or less. A good example of this would be a mortgage. If you have a mortgage that was originated at least a year ago, and you're still making the minimum payment or the monthly payment, so to speak, every time that you have one, but it's just essentially saying you ought to throw your dollars, your extra dollars, that is, into items 1 through 6 before you think about throwing extra dollars into bucket number 7, because theoretically the rate of return historically for a lot of these things are better than 5%. And so it's a better bang for your buck if you do it that way. What this graphic does not include, things like real estate investing, things like buying a business, things like starting a business, things that have the possibility to outweigh the stock market, because that's what the crux of this graphic is. It's different ways to invest in the stock market, and right, wrong, or otherwise, there are other opportunities to, throw your dollars in. Maybe you want to partner with somebody on a real estate deal. Maybe you want to start a franchise business. Maybe you want to do something, where you have some sort of different goals for your life that doesn't look like this sheet. Totally okay. Just figure out where it fits into your waterfall. And so that starts to paint a framework of, what is the order of operations financially? And I will, disclaim that this is not a one-size-fits-all solution. Your situation may have some nuance to it where it doesn't make sense to follow these, and that's okay. Personal finance is personal, totally cool. Not going to get offended if you disagree with me. Just trying to help some people out and think about different ways to frame topics of conversation like this. That's going to wrap up this week's episode of the show. Hopefully there was some beneficial information in here, something that you can take and use in your own life, something that you can share with others. And if there are other folks in your life you think that can get benefit out of this, feel free to share the link with them and let them know that this is content worth checking out. As always, you can leave me a comment. Let me know your thoughts. I'll interact with each and every one of those. And if you are looking to transact real estate in the Indianapolis or the greater Indiana market, you can get in touch with me either in the comments or at indiedwell.com. Always looking to have conversations about real estate because it's something that I'm really passionate about. So until next time, this is Anthony Drew Gary, host of The How To Show, signing off.